Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. The Baylor Bears come in at number 14 in our way too early top 25, fresh off an unbelievable 12-2 season in 2021. In just his second year in Waco, Dave Aranda led the Bears to their most victories in a season, a Big 12 championship, and their first New Year's Day Bowl victory since 1957 with their Sugar Bowl win over Ole Miss. The Bears now enter 2022 with lofty expectations once again and also enter the season as one of the favorites to win the Big 12. So once again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert as we break down the Baylor Bears this year. Again, we're not predicting their record, but we're going to take a look at their schedule, a brief outlook of their team, and what you might be able to expect from Dave Aranda in year 3 with a Baylor team that has seen a major resurgence over these last few years. Before we get started, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Again, guys, hitting that like button, leaving a comment, hitting that subscribe button, things that take you just a few seconds help us out tremendously. We just hit 9,000 subscribers. We could not be happier with that, and we look forward to getting to the next 1,000, the big 10K. So make sure to help us out by joining our Gridiron Expert team and helping our channel grow so we can continue to bring you nonstop college football content year-round. So we take a deeper look at the Bears, take a deeper look at Baylor. What's in store for them in 2022? Well, they lose a lot from last year's historic team. And again, a team that went 12-2, won the Big 12, went to the Sugar Bowl, was really one win away from making the college football playoff. If they don't lose to TCU, they are going to the college football playoff. So this team definitely has the potential and the coaching staff to get them back to a Big 12 championship and maybe even a college football playoff. But they lose a lot. They lose their running back in Abram Smith. They lose Tristan Ebner. They lose R.J. Sneed. They lose Tyquan Thornton. They lose a lot of guys on the offensive side of the ball that were a major reason for Baylor's success because Baylor had one of the more balanced offenses in the entire country last year, and they lose a lot of production from that. But they do return the majority of their offensive line. That's a huge boost. And they have two capable quarterbacks to lead this offense in Gary Bohannon or Blake Shapen. One of them is going to be leading the team. Bohannon led the team for the majority of the year before he battled injuries. Shapen came in and led them to that Big 12 championship over Oklahoma State. So whoever is under center for Baylor is going to do just fine. And we expect the defense to be relatively solid as well. Dave Aranda has kind of implemented that those first 2 years that he's been in Waco. He's one of the better defensive-minded coaches in the game, and we do expect that to stay the same going into year 3. When you take a look at their schedule, it's a tough one. It's going to be very difficult for Baylor to repeat as Big 12 champions. It's going to be very difficult for Baylor to find themselves in the playoff discussion come late November, towards the end of the year. And when you look at it, guys, to me, it's really, there's multiple stretches where you could say this is the difficult key stretch for Baylor. But for us, it actually comes earlier in the year. We're not predicting any games today, but we expect that they'll get past Albany relatively easily. We'll probably get past Texas State as well, even though they only beat the Bobcats by 9 last year. But it's in between those that, to me, is the big stretch for Baylor, and that will really set the tone for their year to see what this team is made of, especially offensively, and whether or not the Bears should be taken seriously as we get deeper into October. It's the games against BYU, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia that, to me, is the key stretch for the Bears. A BYU team that we've just talked about already in our way too early top 25 that is loaded with talent. Is going to be very battle-tested over the course of this year. Great offensive line, great quarterback, very solid defense. Baylor beat the Cougars by 14 in Waco last year, but traveling all the way out to Provo, that's not an easy place to play, and we know that. And this BYU team is no slouch in 2022. So that, to me, is going to be Baylor's first true test. If they can get past the Cougars, start watching out. That's a top 25 matchup right there in week 2, one of the more underrated matchups that's going to kind of set the tone for both teams, for BYU and Baylor. Whoever comes out of that is going to be looking really, really good. We think they'll get past Texas State, then they jump into Big 12 conference play. It's the 2 road games at Iowa State and West Virginia that almost concern me the most. And then you factor in Oklahoma State, which Baylor split that series last year. They lost to the Cowboys in Stillwater in the regular season and then got their revenge over Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game, stopping them literally inches from the goal line. Ultimately preserved that victory 21-16, ultimately the game that mattered the most. But Iowa State, Baylor upset them last year 31-29 in Waco. That was when we knew that Baylor was legit and Iowa State was not going to live up to their expectations, as that was the Cyclones' second loss of the year. So a close matchup there. We've seen some very physical matchups between these programs the last few years. Ames is not an easy place to play. Iowa State, like Baylor, losing a lot of talent from last year despite the very disappointing season. But again, it's the fact that it is on the road at the end of September that kind of concerns me for Baylor. Then they get Oklahoma State right after that, hopefully not hungover after a potential Iowa State loss. The Cowboys are a legitimate team once again. Tons of talent returning from a team that almost made the college football playoff last year as well. And so when you look at Oklahoma State, this is a team that, again, are they going to get revenge over Baylor from that Big 12 championship loss? Are they going to be able to replace a lot of key starters on the defensive side of the ball? This is a game that I think in Waco is going to be relatively even. Maybe Oklahoma State dealing with some defensive struggles, Baylor dealing with some offensive struggles. Perfect combination there that's going to make for a pretty close, I think, low-scoring slugfest in Waco. So not an easy game there. And then they get their bye week, and they go into a Thursday night road game at West Virginia. And we know West Virginia hasn't been a Big 12 power per se. Baylor beat them by 25 points last year, 45-20. But a midweek road game in Morgantown, which, again, to me is not a necessarily easy place to play, especially midweek, concerns me a little bit for Baylor, especially as they're going to start going into that back half of their schedule, which has some bigger opponents. So if Baylor comes into that West Virginia game undefeated or only one loss, I could see them potentially overlooking the Mountaineers despite the bye week. And obviously with the game being, again, on the road, that does concern me some. That, to me, guys, is the big key stretch. So if you take out the Texas State game, it's BYU, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Those four games are going to be the biggest stretch for Baylor in terms of defining their season and really setting them up for a potential Big 12 title run again, or maybe trying to get back to the college football playoff. After that, you could make the case that the month of November is the big four-game stretch for them. Because we think they'll probably get past Kansas. They beat the Jayhawks 45-7. Texas Tech on the road will be no slouch. Baylor only beat them by 3 last year. Texas Tech dealing with a new head coach in Joey McGuire. But then after that, it's the month of November that'll be key again. At Oklahoma, Kansas State, TCU, at Texas. Oklahoma, obviously new head coach in Brent Venables, but Norman, not an easy place to play. A lot of talent coming back for the Sooners. Obviously, it could be a scenario where that game on November 5th determines who goes to the Big 12 championship. Either that, or it could be the first of two meetings between the two teams that will be in the Big 12 championship between the Sooners and the Bears. Kansas State usually pretty solid under Chris Klieman, but Baylor beat them 20-10 on the road last year despite the loss of Bohannon in that game. TCU, obviously a big rivalry game between Baylor and the Horned Frogs. The Horned Frogs dealing with a new head coach in Sonny Dykes. Baylor's certainly going to be out to get revenge over TCU. That comes at a perfect time, in my opinion. We know that if Baylor had beat TCU last year, the Bears would have been in the playoff. They lost to the Horned Frogs 30-28. So they get them at the end of the year on senior night with revenge on their mind, and I can guarantee you that if Baylor is in the playoff hunt at this point, if they are in the Big 12 title hunt at this point, I think they will not cruise past TCU, but they will win comfortably against TCU if they are in a good position, not only because it is senior night, but because they want revenge after what happened last year. And then they close the season out at Texas. Baylor beat them by 7 last year, 31-24. No one really knows what to expect from Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns this year after a very disappointing 2021. A lot of excitement, expectations are high once again in Austin, but typically they always fall short. So again, Austin, not an easy place to play. Baylor cannot afford to overlook them. That's not the most ideal game to end your season with, but it's not one that Baylor is currently in for a shoe-in loss. That's not one that Baylor cannot handle. They certainly can handle the Longhorns, especially if they fail to live up to their lofty expectations. So again, you look at Baylor's schedule again as a whole, it is not easy. Albany, Texas State, maybe Kansas, many would group in there as automatic victories or easy victories. After that, it gets tough. A tough non-conference game at BYU, a road game at Iowa State, road game at West Virginia, road game at Oklahoma, road game at Texas. So the road slate, very, very difficult for Baylor. They've got to find a way to win those and then, of course, defend their home turf in Waco. Majority of their home games are very winnable. It's just a matter of winning the road games. That's going to determine and distinguish whether the Bears are legitimate title contenders, college football playoff contenders, or if they're going to fall a little bit short, take a little bit of a step back after such a historic 2022. But Dave Aranda is doing a phenomenal job in Waco. Baylor, guys, they are here to stay. They are a Big 12 title favorite for a reason. And I feel relatively confident that you will see them back in the Big 12 championship come December. But we're going to save those predictions again for here in just a few months. But guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. Again, help us grow our channel. Help us start the road to 10,000 subscribers. So help us out with that. Join our Gridiron Expert team today so you will not miss out on any of the college football content we have going for you in the following months. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.